You're listening to the AFTERBUZZ TV Network, now the largest new media platform on the web, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment.
Very good, Gene. Johnson.
From the AFTERBUZZ Studios in Los Angeles, California, presented by Maria Menounos and streaming live thanks to Akamai Technologies, this is AFTERBUZZ TV's The Walking Dead After Show. We'll break down tonight's episode and get you all the latest news and gossip. And now, another post-game wrap-up show for your favorite TV show. It's AFTERBUZZ TV's The Walking Dead After Show.
Hey guys, and welcome to the mid-season finale of The Walking Dead. I think an episode everyone's been waiting for since, well, the finale last year. I think we've been waiting for this one for a long time. But tonight, joining us, we have Megan Salinas once again.
Hey everybody.
And next to her, the lovely Kristin Carole.
Hey guys.
And typing away, getting ready for all the comic stuff, because there's a lot this time to talk about, Nando Velasquez.
Hey everybody, how you doing?
And guys, I'm Dave Klein. So let's go ahead and just jump right into our initial reactions, because as I said, this was an episode we've been waiting for since the season finale last year. I mean, I thought this was going to be the season finale last year. Were you expecting the deaths? I think Nando's been expecting for a while Herschel to die. He's been saying that for like 4
I've been
episodes.
predicting it, well, since last season. Yeah, totally. So I feel sadly vindicated. Sadly.
Well,
I don't know how sad you were. When we were watching, you were like, that's right, I got it.
Well, I think everyone's going to die at some point. So yeah, okay, I got it. So you could say that.
No, this was great too, because I don't know if you guys do watch a lot of the interviews with the cast and stuff, but all of them were just like, it's going to all go down in this episode, so it gets you really hyped up. Like, okay, you know, we're prepared for it because the rest of the season. I mean, we saw some people die, but it wasn't the big showdown that we were all anticipating.
I'm actually surprised as many people walked away as they did. I'm actually a little relieved. I'm sad, don't get me wrong, but I'm a little relieved. I'm like, oh, good.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I think in the comics a lot more people died, so I was expecting the same thing. I was like, okay, well, it seems like Herschel was really the only one. That was the main guy, so I mean, that's
then
pretty
there's
much
the
it.
possibility of
got
Judy.
shot.
Yeah, actually, well, they said in the mid-season finale clips beforehand that some will fall. So
Yeah.
to see Herschel be the only one, I mean, I'm grateful that he's
There
the
are a
only
lot
one.
on the governor's side.
Yeah, most of the governor's side, you know, and let's not forget poor Megan.
Megan and
oh, poor Megan.
Sorry for your name counterparts. I was like, Megan's going to die. And she's like, don't say that.
Please stop saying that.
But Megan's back.
Yay.
You got a lot older, I have to say.
Also, yeah, I might look a little different from the last time you saw me, but yeah.
Just a little bit.
Well, and then Alicia died by the hands of Lizzie, which was crazy to
That
me.
I did not see
I
coming.
was surprised.
Lizzie taking Carol's notes to heart in that moment. But before we go on, and we're going to come back to this as we go through the episode, we've actually got the quiz, and we're going to pull the quiz winners live right here, right now, because Megan, who we talked about, is actually the one who got all the autographs for you guys with Kristin. Mm-hmm. So they were together for the live carpet, so why don't you take it away?
Yeah, and she has to leave a little bit early, so I wanted to make sure she was the one to give this away, because it's kind of her baby.
Aw, thanks,
So whoever
guys.
gets this, please enjoy it. What we're going to do is everybody's name. Also, thank you for last week. It was 9 days, so the first 5 people are in here as well. And we had a few people who are in here 2 times and 3 times, and the first person we pick is the winner. We're going to pick a runner-up just in case the first person, for whatever reason, doesn't send me a message. So send me a message on YouTube, because we've been doing this on YouTube, and my YouTube is Kristin Carole 13, and you can see I've commented it on the comments as well, so you can message me on there very easily.
So should I grab 2?
Grab one first. So this will be our winner.
We need like a drum roll music or something.
All right.
And the winner of the
And
poster is...
The winner is Aaron Miller.
All right.
Aaron
Congratulations,
Miller.
Aaron Miller.
And then runner...
You won a Windows startup screen.
So Aaron Miller, send me a message within a week or so on YouTube, and with your, hi, I'm Aaron, and your address where you want the poster to be sent, and I'll send that as soon as possible. In case Aaron doesn't claim his prize in a week, the runner-up is... There we go.
And our runner-up is Mr. Senior.
There we go. I thought it'd be funny if Aaron Miller was the second one again. Like, oh, well, he had 3
Second
choices.
one is Aaron Miller. No.
I think Aaron Miller may have entered twice, because
That
we
would've
did.
been
We had a
pretty
few
funny.
repeat people, so...
Well, congratulations, Aaron, on the poster. Make sure to contact Kristin. And on the chat, a bunch of you guys talking about the what you guys got from your initial impressions from the show. Pat saying so emotional, and Brett Henry thinking that they really gave fans a treat with this episode. So, like I was saying, the episode everyone was waiting for this time. But let's go ahead and rewind and go back to the beginning of the episode where we have the governor throwing out his lies, that liar! Throwing out lies to them, kind of saying his side of the story and twisting it a little bit. And we get background of Michonne being captured, Herschel being captured by the governor, as he basically blames all the deaths of the people that we saw earlier on them. And then he kind of glosses over the real details of Woodbury and also blames the fire of Woodbury on them.
I thought that was interesting. Way to completely remake history.
Well, something you brought up when talking about the show last season was that there's an element of truth in everything the governor says, and it's fascinating to just watch him use that and twist it and be as charismatic and charismatic. I can totally talk as he is, and get people on his side. No matter how bad he is, no matter what he does, he can somehow twist the truth around to get people on his side.
Well, I don't know if I said it on this show or if I said it on another AfterBuzz show, but all villains really think they're doing good. They always do. So this is just the governor's return to form. It's about time after the last 2 episodes, seeing his return to form and just what he said that the prisoners did to him. They mutilated him. Okay, they're right about that. They burned his camp, which we all know wasn't true, that he did it. And they killed my daughter, which at first I figured he was talking about zombie Penny, but then he even admitted it later on in the episode. I understand Penny was dead, but still in his mind, they still stole that away from him.
The interesting thing to me about this scene was that everyone was so, again, with this group, so easy to buy into everything that he was saying, where this guy shows up, all of a sudden, 2 of their main leaders die out of the blue.
Yeah,
and
nobody questions
they're just so willing. Yeah, the only person who questioned him was Lily. That was the only person. So it was kind of just like, come on, mindless villagers, question a little bit more. Not to be that mindless.
And Lily's the one that's closest to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all these people who don't know him at all are just like, yeah, okay, this guy sounds good. He's tall. He looks good. Let's just go.
And as he's getting more confident, she says, I love you. And he says, I love you to Lily. And she's like, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
And he was like, they're bad people. And he's saying, we're not killing people, we're killing killers. And she's like, am I with a bad person right now? Is that what's going on?
Yeah.
I'm just amazed. He said so many different versions of what he was going to do to so many different people. I'm surprised he can keep it straight.
Tangy D on the chat saying, like, this guy with an eye patch is telling me to attack a bunch of randoms. Yeah, I'll totally believe into that.
I mean, who doesn't believe people like that?
Well, I mean, it's a pirate. I'm like, all right, I'll go along with pirate.
It kind of sounds fun. Let's swashbuckle with him.
We have our heading.
So he ends up going in then to the room with Herschel, with Michonne, and having a conversation with the 2 of them about what he's going to do, and tells Herschel, don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. Whoops. One person, but Herschel disagreeing and basically saying and telling him, like, hey, if you have a daughter, if you understand what it's like to have a daughter, how can you threaten to kill someone else's daughter, which is exactly what the governor's doing. So just kind of a good line from Herschel there, which is true. And
that line has so much
it's not his
foreshadowing.
daughter.
That line has so much foreshadowing later on when we talk about Megan. But yeah, I totally agree. What I thought was interesting was last week, what was the name of the guy that took leadership from Martinez?
Peter.
Peter was a good man who didn't want to ransack a camp. And just like Martinez, who was trying to be a good man as well, governor killed him. So once he talked to Herschel, a good man, I kind of knew right then and there that he was done, because that's what he does. That's what he seems to do with good men in leadership positions. He seems to take the leadership from them because he considers them weak in some sort of way. So when he said good man, better man than Rick, he respects Rick. Notice how much he's in a standoff with Rick and standing there talking to him. With Herschel, with all the other people, that he has no problem like stabbing them in the back.
Yeah.
So
Really liked that scene with them in the trailer because it was interesting to see them all talking together. I thought it was a different view on a villain aspect, and I like that The Walking Dead always seems to do that, is bring it about in a different way, because they could have just fast forward and here they're going to be thrown in front of it. And I really like that confrontation between them. And Michonne's like, I'm going to kill you. and Herschel's like, don't say that.
The other thing we get in this conversation, though, is Herschel throwing out that idea of like, well, we can all just live together and learn to do that. And the governor giving out the exact same points that actually a lot of you guys who watch were throwing out there, like, no, it'll never work out. He can never live with Michonne. He can never live with Rick. And basically the governor just repeating all that. grow up, Governor. Grow up. Learn how to live with people. So, but I just found it kind of ironic that that's exactly what the people on the chat were saying, and everyone was saying on the comments is exactly what the governor's points were.
But what's interesting is the governor did say, he did say that, and I think all of us agreed with that. But at the same time, it's really two egos. We just can't picture Rick and the governor living together. But toward the end of the episode, right before Herschel was gone, Rick totally was like, we can make this work. And I thought it was really authentic, the way he said it. It wasn't a line.
It did seem sincere.
It seemed incredibly sincere. Rick was willing to make bygones be bygones. He was willing to put whatever past behind him. And the governor claimed it wasn't about the past, but obviously he still felt that he couldn't live with Rick based on the past.
And it was funny what he said right before he killed Herschel. He's just liar. Of all the people, to accuse someone else of being a liar, the governor.
Well, his reality is warped.
Maybe because they, even when they're writing them, they say, Rick and the governor are so close that if he views himself as a liar, he thinks Rick is. He's automatically putting it on Rick because they are so close in their leadership role. And people have mentioned the parallels between the two of them, except one's evil. And I also thought it was interesting, too, that Rick looked to Herschel for his, almost kind of guidance, like unspoken guidance. And Herschel kind of nodded after Rick made his big speech about why they can live together, because it was exactly what Herschel said. So he was kind of more channeling Herschel now. And Herschel.
What would Herschel do?
And that's
Yeah,
why
that's why he
Herschel smiled.
smiled.
That was awesome. That was a great way
approval.
for Herschel to go. It's like, finally, I made some sense. I got some sense into Rick, and then he's gone. It's like his guardian angel just leaving him.
Well, he didn't totally go at that moment. He was kind of
close.
worming away for a while.
But one thing I do want to say about the liar comment, because I think it's really important, is we saw the governor. Actually, what's interesting is the governor had an opportunity to change the past two episodes. I mean, as bored as I was 2 weeks ago, this was his chance to really find redemption. And I think the governor calling Rick a liar was almost like him saying, I tried. I went that route. Didn't work. I went back to my old ways. There's no way that works for you. So I really think that he's taking that from his own experience.
Yeah, he was probably more saying, with Rick saying, we can all change, and that's more what he was talking about. Like, no, we can't change. You're being a liar.
Exactly.
Right now.
Yeah, I totally like that. So.
And
Right.
Just as a small, I know once Rick said we couldn't leave the prison because of the children in there, I just kept thinking, like, just give him the prison. It's not working that well for you guys right now. It's flu infested. The walls are falling. Take the prison. Get on that bus.
Yeah,
I guess
where
it's
they
just
go.
like he can't let them win. It's probably that mentality.
Well, and it's a big group. There's a lot more people he has to be
Yeah.
responsible for now than he was at the beginning of season 3.
If he had more than just a day to get out of there, I mean.
Well, and half the people are still sick. They're really slow. And if you're sending them out there with herds and herds of walkers, they're not going to get very far.
Well, it's also exactly what Rick said, too, is that they have children. They have sick people at this point. And, I mean, that's why he says he can't leave, is for that exact reason. He doesn't want to risk it with the children. He's got sick people who can hardly move. Glenn was slumping around, and he was one of the most prominent figures before. He could hardly do anything. So at this point, he's like, well, we need this prison to protect people from being out there for the time being.
Yeah.
So I can see his points. Like,
No, I understood once he said that, but before that, I wasn't thinking of it that way. I was just kind of like, well, let him have it. It's not doing that great for you guys right now anyway.
Yeah,
Sure.
especially after a couple of episodes this season, it was just like, you're probably just going to get sick the second you step in anyway.
But you know what? They've been in the prison for so
Infested.
long. I almost feel like they've probably gone a little. They might get a little soft when it comes to being out there in a large group with kids and women.
That's
It's a
true.
security blanket that is really hard to give up. So I can't see anybody really just saying, "You're right," without at least trying to. Anyone else other than the governor, maybe they could have talked him into some kind of compromise. But obviously, it was the governor, and they couldn't do that with him. So.
Well, rewinding back a little bit to before this all happened, the governor had a chat with Megan, and he actually decided to leave. Everyone came except for Lily and Megan. Surprise, surprise. So the two people that the governor really cares about, he left them behind to do other work. So that's kind of just an important note for later on. But as I was talking about Glenn being sick, we have a while with the prison before the war does erupt and everything happens, where we see that Glenn is still sick and Maggie's watching over him, which will come into effect later on, and their anniversary is coming up. And then Daryl finally finding out something that we've been wanting to see for weeks. Daryl finding out about what happened with Carole and actually really pissed off about it. So it's something that, again, like a couple weeks ago, we were like, we don't want to see this stuff with the governor. We want to see this conversation. So it's nice they actually showed it on screen, his reaction, and Daryl was legitimately mad, except for not enough to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Well, he understands where Rick's coming from too. I mean, he was put in in between a rock and a hard place.
Well, he also doesn't seem to totally believe it. He's like, that's not Carole. So it seems like he doesn't want to think that Carole totally believed that.
Well, this is a very different Daryl than the first episode when he discovered Merle was missing, locked, chained up on a rooftop, and, everyone was really scared. This is a very almost emo type of Daryl, the way he was just like getting all on the railing and everything. I actually found that a little surprising. I mean, it's great leadership for him to actually control himself and listen to reason, but at the same time, this was a woman he was very involved with. We don't know exactly how much, but we could see there was definitely a connection there. And he took it almost a little too well.
I think Rick's like a brother to him, though, too. And I think that definitely eases stuff when somebody that close to you comes up and says something. It would have definitely been different if, Herschel had done it, or, Tyrese. Well, not Tyrese, obviously, but, somebody else who knew, or Maggie knew. So I think it's the fact that it was Rick, and they've become so close. And even the actors off screen are really close, so I think that shows through a lot.
Yeah, and Tangy D on the chat kind of agreeing that Daryl seemed confused and just didn't seem to believe that was something that Carole would do.
But why would Rick lie about it?
Right, but why would Rick lie about it? So then they're off to go tell Tyrese, and I'm kind of sad that we didn't get to see Tyrese find out. I would have liked his reaction, but we find another interesting thing in that moment, which is that hole that's now opened up with something crawling through, the rats, and that's not something Carole would do, and it's just, how did that even happen?
So yeah, we still haven't found out who's been feeding rats to the walkers.
Well, I think
Lizzie.
we think it's Lizzie, and actually, you know what? The fact that Daryl is confused, I mean, we still don't know 100% if Carol's the one who killed those two people. So there still is a possibility.
I think it is.
I think it is.
She owned up to it.
But I mean, Tyrese even said, well, just because she owned up to it, she might have been protecting someone.
No, it's the fact that she was kicking over the water and she was so upset about it. There's no way that she would have been acting like that before anyone accused her.
But Tyrese thinks that the person who did the rats and the person who killed the two people are the same person. So it still proves the point that there's somebody, and the way that rat was killed, it was like dissected in half or something. That was kind of something a little sick. So I don't know if psychopath's the right word that Tyrese used.
And that's what he said. He's like, we've got a psychopath, around, living with us. And there sort of was one in the comics at one point when they first got to the prison.
Spoiler, we don't want to talk about that. That's one of my favorite scenes, but
I'm not going to say any more on it. But like, that makes me wonder. I know they're trying to be a little bit truer to the comics this season. So it makes me wonder if we're coming back around to that particular plot point. And I hope not, because that means trouble.
I don't know how they could show that. But.
Well, it's funny, though, that you're saying that, because when we had one of the actors of the show on, he was saying that Robert Kirkman was encouraging them to go a completely opposite direction from the comics.
But the
Although
current showrunner,
right now it is very similar.
Right now, it's really funny because the current showrunner, Robert Kirkman wants them to go and do their own thing and be, it's more of its own universe. But the current showrunner wants to be truer to the comics, and so it's so funny to see them go back and forth. And honestly, those are the two that are debating. Robert Kirkman wants saying, no, go off, do your own thing, and the current showrunner is like, nope, let's stick with what the comic has.
Well, I mean, this is the first episode it really seems to emulate the comic so far. So, we'll see what happens following this. But, this was definitely a breath of air to anyone who's read the comic to see a lot of similarities.
I do want to actually,
which we can go over later.
See that psychopath character. For those of you who read the comics, I actually thought that was a really crazy scene, which I would want to see on the show. Pretty intense, though. So the other conversation we get is Bob and Sasha before we have the war, which is Sasha telling Bob thank you, and Bob just not able to accept it. Even though Bob did help, he also just is still clearly upset with himself over the things he did with the bag and the fact his alcoholism affecting his judgment and what he's doing once again, the second time in a row. So it was kind of nice for Sasha to come in there and try and force him to accept that he did something good. And I don't know, maybe we're going to see a romance there between them.
I think that's likely. I think from the first episode, you kind of saw a little bit of that there. So it's a possibility. Yeah.
But the one conversation I really wanted to see is I did want to see how Tyrese was going to take it. And unfortunately, it was interrupted by the giant boom of the tank and what we've been talking about, which is that whole conversation where the governor comes up. And the governor just, this whole time, it's just so, as we were talking about, just relentless. He won't listen to reason. And this is the second time I was thinking, and this is when I was really thinking about it. Like, okay, maybe the group, the people who were with the governor believed him the first time. But after watching this scene of Rick telling him, hey, you guys can come live with us, we can all live together, the fact that no one there budge, thought to question the governor or even chime in. Like, I was like, come on, you gotta think. There's gotta be one person who can think smartly and think like, well, why do we have to fight? Why do we have to kill everybody? We can all
Well,
just
the one
live
person who
together.
kind of you could see was Sarah, who was the one who was talking trash the whole first
Tara.
Tara. She was talking like smack the whole first last two episodes about how tough she is and she can handle a gun and trying to be. I loved it when she got called out last week. Obviously,
some
by
good
Alicia.
bravado.
But yeah, she's got some really good bravado. But you could see the fear in her face, and she was literally shell shocked toward the end of that face off and everything. So that was crazy.
Well, and I thought a little bit with Alicia when the governor was making his speech, she kept kind of looking back, and I wasn't sure if that was a slight hesitation to, what is he saying? Is that okay? But I think she definitely, you have a lot of military people and they have a certain alliance to their group, and I think that's great. I have military in my family, so I think maybe that was part of it where you get into a little bit of taking orders area instead of it.
Well, Tangy D on the chat saying Woodbury Sheeple 2.0. So version 2, which is sort of is. I just feel like if you were there and hearing that conversation, you really start to question this random person that you're following orders from who you just met 2 weeks ago.
I mean, how many people, though, do you hear even on the news nowadays? There was that one woman that, was getting beaten on the highway, and everybody in their cars, like, nobody did anything. Nobody came out and said anything. I mean, you hear time and time again.
It's because I'm late for work.
Well,
Kristen,
don't
and
forget-
I need to get to work.
Don't
or
forget-
people take out their phones and they take pictures
that's
of
the
it.
bystander
Yeah.
effect.
Exactly.
Don't
Yeah.
forget, you say it was 2 weeks because we saw it 2 weeks ago, but really the flashbacks for the governor started from the moment he left and he shot his own people and ran off.
Well,
We don't know.
I'm specifically
It's
talking
been-
about the villagers knowing him, but
But the villagers, we don't know that timeline exactly when he ran into the villagers. It wasn't apparently 2 weeks ago. Remember that it's been months since the last confrontation with the governor. It was 3 months, I think, approximately, from the first episode of this season. So, yeah, we don't know exactly how much time he's been with the governor. But, yeah, I mean, for people, even under that short amount of time, to blindly follow him, it still is a little bit weird. But, again, people like Mitch have military training, and I think they're just looking for a leader who will take charge. So he's very charismatic in that way, and he's definitely a lot more charismatic than we saw him 2 weeks ago, for example.
Well, Mitch had a gun pointed at him too, last week. So
yeah.
Mitch knows exactly what's going to happen if he doesn't listen to the governor.
Well, he's got a tank. He's holding onto a tank, and he's got an automatic. The governor's just got a revolver and one eye. Come on.
With really good aim for no depth perception.
Well, when you think about it, when I shoot a gun, I close one eye. So
So he's already
someone
halfway
actually-
there. He's a
someone
quick shot.
Well, someone on YouTube was actually commenting that when we were saying that, and you're right. When I shoot a gun, I've shot rifles and shotguns. You always close one eye to aim. So maybe he's perfect for aiming. That's what it is. He was made to aim now. But the other thing in this scene that was an important moment was him calling out Rick and forcing Rick into making decisions. When Rick, at this point, that we've seen, he's always pushed it on to someone else and pushed it away. And this is the moment where he's forced into that role once again, which will, I think, become important to the future here. But just kind of, like I said, a good tie around to bring that back and force Rick into his leadership role again.
Well, again, he has no respect for anyone that like Herschel, who is a good man in leadership. So Rick is his rival. He apparently has some sort of respect for Rick enough to want to parlay with him personally. So and I guess also he feels like because they're so similar, he called him out as a liar. They're so similar that he can relate to him. So I really feel there's a lot of that there with the two of them. But yeah, again, Rick being called, even though Rick was like, I'm not the leader anymore. I don't make these kinds of choices. He's almost getting back into Farmer Rick. Like, give it to somebody else. It's someone else's responsibility.
He's like, where are my pigs?
Yeah, where are my pigs? What happened to the pigs?
Whoops.
And here he gets called
Awful.
into to parlay with the governor, right, with a tank like staring him down, which is really awesome, I thought. So
Well, I think sometimes, too, it's just faster than having the whole council get together and, hey, let's take a vote on, what's going on. And he wanted to attack them anyways.
Well, it's also when you think
Yeah.
about during a
That's what he
time
wanted
of
to
war,
do.
that's when the president of the United States is allowed to take full leadership.
Mm.
Is during a time of war. That's usually when you just need decisions to happen like that. So it does make sense that during a time of war you do that, because otherwise you spend too long debating what are we going to do and nothing happens.
Well, and thankfully all of his group trust him enough where if he is the one representing them, they don't have that big of a problem with it. So.
Right.
I think, they're back to trusting him like that. Yeah, I can agree with that.
Well, then he also left Daryl. So Daryl, again, the second-hand man, Daryl takes charge of everyone else, passing out the laundry baskets. full of
Sneaky
guns.
Daryl.
That was great.
I just loved how he looked like when he was sneaking people guns and like sneaking the little bin and everything like that. He just looked so funny.
He looked like he was trying to slyly do it. No one could see. I agree. It was kind of a funny look because it's like everyone's pretty concentrated over there. But that's just kind of Norman Reedus' acting. I think Norman Reedus acts like that in everything.
He's awesome.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was great to see him do that. While all this horrible buildup is going on, it was great to see Daryl take action like that.
Well, speaking of the horribleness, we actually get Megan.
Oh no!
Oh, Megan. Megan digging up a trench and Lily watching a walker go across the water, and as it's swept away by this warning flash flood sign.
Which the walker drowning was really, I thought that was kind of funny.
It was pretty funny. I agree.
Bobbing.
Like,
and of course, it was a nice little, the walker's drowning. Everyone's okay. But you knew nothing was okay.
No.
It was still a lot of suspense there for that scene.
And that was a good, actually a good way to foreshadow what was going to happen. The fact that, oh, look, the river has swept someone away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, that's good.
The river had buried somebody.
While we're on Megan, I just want to say before that, when she's with the governor and she says, my hands are all muddy, I thought that was a great scene. My hands are all muddy. And she says, I messed it all up. And the governor's like, no, you made it better. And this is coming from a man whose hands are bloody. So I really loved that scene between the two of them.
That's an interesting connection.
Yeah, I really love that. But then, of course, her playing in the mud, which just reminded me of that pit when she was down in the pit with the zombies. And what a way to go. It's reading that sign, and I guess she's not old enough to read yet or something. It's like flash flood area. And then that realization that the zombies were buried under that due to a flash flood. It's just crazy. So, but one other thing I wanted to bring up too, when Herschel has that conversation earlier and he says, if you know what it's like to have a daughter, how could you threaten to kill someone else's daughter? And the governor says, because they aren't mine. I mean, for the past couple of weeks, we kind of assumed that she was the new Penny. That he was going to take Megan, and if anything, everyone else was going to die. Like Lily and Tara were going to die, and he was just going to have Megan. And here we go with Lily bringing the corpse of Megan, that's not zombified yet apparently, to the governor. And unlike Penny, which he would have just kept and he would have chained up and had in his living room,
combed her hair, and
he shot her because it's not his daughter. Ultimately, he's so cold and calculated. He didn't even care about Megan enough to really mourn her. It was like 1 second. He took more time to probably mourn for Herschel, who he didn't even like, than he did for Megan, which I thought
was. Or it's a case of, see, Governor, people can change. He did change.
You didn't keep your daughter.
No.
This time.
Yeah.
I think it's actually different because he talks to Michonne and he acknowledges, he's like, I know now that my daughter was dead. I understand that now, and he says he doesn't harbor any bad blood towards that. How much I believe that?
Yeah,
no way.
He's half lying that whole thing too. Yeah.
But he does acknowledge that once a person becomes a zombie, they're not a person anymore. Once they're a biter or a walker or whatever you want to call it, anything that was left of who they were is gone. And so he knows that now. And so I think he would rather make sure that didn't happen to Megan than actually sit there and watch her become a zombie and possibly put Lily in danger, because Lily was carrying her. We don't know how far away that was.
Yeah.
She got in a car. She must have gotten into a car and driven over there.
Well, anyway, guys, I think I got to head on out.
No,
so.
all right. Megan. We'll see you
Now
next
that we're
time.
done talking about Megan being dead, I got to go.
Megan's dead.
Megan has to go.
I was like,
And the
I gotta
river
make sure to talk
sweeps.
about Megan while Megan is here.
And the river sweeps someone else
Thanks
away.
so much for having me, guys.
Of course. Of course. So as Megan steps out, let's go ahead and talk about the kind of the end of this confrontation here, which is the governor taking his blade to Herschel, as we were talking about, and just not listening to anything that Rick's saying per se. And as Rick mentions change, that's when it kind of snaps with the governor, and he pulls the blade back and goes straight over, and that guy sliced his head off with the sword as
I didn't think they were going to show it. I actually was surprised. I was saying beforehand, no, they're not going to show it. They're not going to show it. And they actually showed it, and it was worse because it wasn't a clean cut.
Yeah.
It was not a clean cut at all. So that was really, really shocking. Oh, well, it was kind of shocking, but I kind of saw it coming. I'm like, no, Herschel's not going to make this one. So, yeah.
Well, immediately everyone starts bursting out of gunfire, and immediately we also have Michonne rolling away.
Michonne's
The way she does
awesome.
things.
She was awesome. With all the gunfire that was going off between Rick and the whole governor posse, and nobody was hitting anyone except for governor got grazed. I think that was about it. Amazing.
Rick got shot in the leg.
He got shot in the leg?
I think it was the leg.
It's another case of actually what Steven brought up last season, which is just how funny is that when it's walkers, they have this dead-on aim, and you see the governor acting intimidating and look, I can shoot walkers from this far away. and hit them right in the head. And as soon as it's live people, all of a sudden they turn into stormtroopers, and they cannot shoot at all.
Yeah.
Which it's kind of funny. I mean, you have to do it for a show like this. But I was expecting more deaths. I thought, like, all right, this is going to be the time we're actually going to have more people moving on.
It was a great time to clean house if they really wanted to. So.
Well, we saw a lot of the governor's group that we don't know who they are die.
Yeah, but that's the equivalent of red shirts. I mean, as far as people we care about. Yeah.
But I'm just saying, so technically there were some deaths, but not as many as
And I'm guessing
we
there was
cared
some.
about.
It looked like some people went down in the prisoner side too. But again, people we didn't get to know in the past 5-6 episodes. So yeah.
Tangy D saying, and he said kill them all, Dave. So he did say kill them all, and he kind of missed that. The other thing is he was pointing out like how much of an advantage they had with their tank and everything, and they really lost big time. Pretty much all of their numbers were killed. Most of the prison group got away on the bus, and everyone except for Herschel seems to have survived. We don't know what happened to Judith, but it seems like they really didn't do much damage at all.
Yeah.
But again, most of these people aren't trained with a gun. I'm sure hardly any of them. The only people you ever saw with a gun in this group was were the people that the governor killed outside of Mitch.
Yeah.
The governor killed off everyone who was good with a gun.
And then Shumpert and Martinez stayed
which is
alive.
another reason that was surprising to me they were so willing to be part of a war when they don't ever do this stuff anyways.
Well, Alicia, was good with a gun, and she almost made it all the way.
They had some soldiers in the group. It seemed we just really got to know Peter and Mitch because they were on that supply run. And then Alicia, because she was talking in that scene with Tara, she was talking about her expertise.
And I think the prison group, also it being on their turf, they kind of have home court advantage, so to speak, is that they know the area, they're used to it, so they know the little nooks and crannies. Oh, I can hide here, I can hide there. So I think that also kind of helps with their numbers, where the governor's group, they've never been here before. They don't know, like, oh, they can come out from this side or this angle.
Oh yeah, well we saw that in the season finale last year when they had that whole big play when the governor invaded and they all hid and got him, so which was awesome.
So then the governor decides to ruin it for everybody by driving the tank through the fence.
If I can't have it.
Rick even said, if either we all live here together or we're not going to, because if the governor was going to go through and fight with everything with the tank, it is going to wreck their new home. And it did. Those fences were gone. And it was I really liked how they added that, all the walkers started coming in. So it was kind of showing this is definitely the end of an era.
Well, even like at that moment, it was nice to have 3 groups there, because all of a sudden now you have a third party part of the war in a sense, because that's another thing you have to take into consideration is around any corner there could be a walker walking up to me, and there are people shooting at me from around the corner. Daryl obviously handling it like a pro.
Yeah.
But
like Daryl's walker shield was
the walker
fantastic.
shield.
That was really good.
And also, Daryl again taking the grenade, throwing it into the tank pipe. Pretty awesome, I gotta say. Yeah, I was like, there's no way they're gonna kill Daryl. That's like Nando was asking while we were watching the show, who do you think will survive? And I was like, well, Daryl and Rick are gonna survive. Those are the 2 people I can say for sure.
Although I was shocked when I saw that zombie looked really close and they cut away. I was like, whoa, wait a second here.
I yelled at one point, I'm like, go back to Daryl and make sure he's okay.
But we also have all the groups splitting up. So we have they have a plan, which is to go to the bus. All the kids are going to the bus, the people going to the bus, except Lizzie decides that, hey, Carole has trained us to do these things. We need to act properly. And as you mentioned earlier, Kristin, she actually does things. She actually takes out Tara's girlfriend, so Alicia. So her actually doing a lot to help out. So Carole kind of right in a sense. Carole was absolutely right with the fact that they need to train people for this new era, because that's just how things are.
But Lizzie had the baby.
Yeah.
And let go of the baby to shoot Alicia. So there goes that too. She's still not. I mean, okay, she's tough, but she's still not all there. And
those 2 other girls were holding the bassinet or whatever.
Yeah, I figured the other girls
with
were
her?
doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she was with the group, but she wasn't the one handling it. So I have to wonder what happened to those other kids. I mean, did they maybe make it to the bus, or did somebody have to grab Judith and run for it? Somebody who maybe got shot, because there was so much blood in there.
Well, regardless, just the fact that they were all together and then Lizzie and Mika separate, that goes to say something too, that they're just not.
Yeah, they're not completely
team players.
thinking.
Yeah,
It was
they're not
like,
completely
well, we have to
thinking.
kill these things, instead of, well, we have to protect these other things that can't protect themselves.
I mean, Carole gave her that advice to protect them, but they they just know how to survive on their own, perhaps.
Right.
You know, and again, we're assuming that this psychopath that Tyrese mentioned, the one that's cutting up the rats and doing all these things, is Lizzie. So there's still that to be mentioned that'll probably be brought up in the spring.
Well, in the chat, Brent Henry saying Carole was right. Pat, freaking Liz with the headshot. Bahaha Val saying, you did good, Lizzie.
It was
You
good.
did good. And Liz Z on the chat saying that was amazing. I literally cheered.
Maybe the kids should shoot, because Carl and Liz seem to have good shots instead of having everybody else shoot each other.
I think probably.
Yeah,
Well,
you're
they
right.
always say it's easier to learn something when you're younger.
Right. It absolutely is.
Get them while they're young.
This is also a moment where we get everyone completely splitting up. So you see Maggie trying to help Glenn, but Beth's missing. So Maggie runs off to go grab Beth, and in that moment, the bus drives off with Glenn. So now Glenn and Maggie are going to be separated, and who knows if we're going to see them find each other again.
I have faith
My
that we
prediction
will.
is that we will. Yeah, I agree.
It may not be the first episode of next part of the season, but they'll find each other again.
Yeah.
Love always finds a way. That was cheesy.
It does, except for in Walking Dead. It doesn't at all ever in Walking Dead. But yeah, I do think they're going to find each other. But again, all the prison group completely splitting off in separate directions, because you have the bus that's separated. You have the children now who find some, but now they're gone. I mean, they've sort of disappeared. Daryl ends up finding Beth. So Beth actually helping him out. So they're together. And I believe Michonne broke free. And Michonne was the one who helped Rick out.
Yeah, she's the one who got finally her revenge on the governor.
And then she walked away, and we don't know if she met up with anybody or not. You know, she kind of looked at the governor and then walked away by the time Lily came over.
Well, she took Rick with her.
But at the end, we saw Rick just with Carl.
Yeah.
So did she ditch them? Is she in the background there? I mean,
She's probably, I'm sure she's...
was it just for the shot so it looks like the comics?
Yeah, I think
Right.
it was more for the shot. She doesn't have that relationship with Judith
Yeah.
like Carl and Rick.
Mexican Stallion pointing out Tyrese still can't shoot. He was ineffective, which is very true.
He needs his hammer.
Brent, yeah, he just needed his hammer. That's what I was dealing with. It's like, we need to give him his hammer.
You know what's funny?
He'll
You
be
see
so much better.
Alicia gets shot and you get a close-up of Tyrese just still like in the bushes. Like,
Yeah.
no, it wasn't him. Oh, it was Liz. And then you see another shot and you see Tyrese again. He's like totally ineffective,
Yeah.
just hanging out, just lying down. They just wanted to re-emphasize that he cannot shoot.
Maybe they should have told him that Carol was the one that killed Karen, and then he would have gone all angry again on people.
Yeah, that's exactly
Maybe that
what
would
we
have been.
needed.
They didn't have him in the right frame of mind.
That's a great point. So Brent Henry on the chat saying, is this Tyrese supposed to be a former NFL player? In the comics he is.
Yeah.
But in the show they haven't given him that backstory, at least yet. So we don't know for the show, as far as the show is concerned.
Maybe that's
But-
why he's a former NFL player.
Yeah. But it is an important point that this is where we see the governor die. So Governor and Rick have this giant fist fight with each other, and the governor
Beautiful.
actually having the upper hand on Rick,
Yeah.
taking him out before Michonne takes out the governor. And also a big moment for Michonne, where she decided to just leave him and just decide, you know what, he's dying, it's good enough. She didn't do anything else to him, and she definitely thought about it. And good on her for deciding to just leave it be. And I also like seeing, so Lizzie then comes back, and
Lily.
or Lily, thank you. Lily ended up coming back, and she ended up being the one who finally finished him, which I was really glad about, especially if you read the comics, because I was kind of thinking, like, it's got to be Lily's. That's such a comic connection. They have to do something like that. So I was glad to see that returned. But again, Lily, at this point, doesn't even know who he is. When he's on the tank shouting what he's shouting, he's just a completely different person, completely changed from who she met 2 weeks ago, in the episode 2 weeks ago.
Well, and I think also the fact that when she passed over Megan to him, he didn't shed a tear. There was nothing. And so obviously, I think that whole connection where he even says, I love you, and, you know, loves Megan and spent all this time, she's just looking at him like he's not even
It's another
crying.
lie. It's another half-truth from him.
It's his reason to
Yeah.
to do things. It's not who he actually is.
His inability to connect really authentically with anybody. Yeah.
But moving on, we have this kind of wraps up the war. So everyone escaping. We don't know where Tara is. She got away somehow. At one point when she ran away, and Alicia was going to take care of things. So Tara's away. But we see the final moments are Rick and Carl have survived. They don't know where Judith is because they find the bloody baby carriage,
Yeah.
and they're just going off on their own into the woods. So actually, again, very reminiscent of the comics.
Can I just say that, I mean, we know that Rick shows this kind of emotion, like when his wife died in childbirth, you know, him screaming at the end of the episode and curling up practically in a fetal
Yeah.
position. But to see Carl so emotional. That was the first time I think I've ever seen Carl. I think a big thing about Carl is just he's been so numb about everything, and he's not been an ordinary kid. And even when his mom, don't forget, he shot zombie Shane and he shot his mom so she wouldn't become a zombie. And he took it like a man. And here he is now, the two of them going to the carriage and seeing a bloodied baby carriage, and no Judith. And just to see Carl's reaction was really, really amazing for me.
No, I agree. And I was also thinking, A, good acting on his part. But
Chandler Briggs, yeah.
But B, I actually wrote the exact same note, that this is the first time we've really seen this sort of emotional response out of Carl. Even as you said, when his mom died, he wasn't screaming like this and this bad. So it's actually, I consider it a positive thing in the sense that it's almost like he still has this human side, because he's shown so much of indifference to everything in the same way that Beth had become, showing indifference. And that's also another note, too, is when Herschel died, you saw Beth screaming.
Yeah, she was screaming at Dad.
So that was Beth, someone who, when her boyfriend died, she was just like, whatever.
They all die anyway. They all die. And
that's actually something we talked about before, too, which was that if Herschel died, that would be the one thing that affected Beth. And we do see that. And actually, Maggie carrying out the advice of Herschel, which is that everyone has a job to do. We see Maggie living on and bringing forth everything that Herschel, all the advice and all the knowledge he had to dispense. We see it coming back.
Yeah, we see her running in to try and save people, which was Herschel did for the virus to put himself at risk. So we definitely see Maggie taking that spot.
Right.
I agree with that. We have to see if she becomes a moral compass like, I'm not sure if she'll be a moral compass like Herschel was, but she's definitely trying to emulate her dad. She's learned from her dad.
So that does wrap up the episode, but before we go on to comments from you guys and all that, we should probably talk a bit about the comics. I know Nando wants to, because this episode especially, we've seen a lot of divergences from the comics, especially second season. And if you guys don't want to hear this, you can just skip
Spoiler,
ahead.
big time spoiler.
There'll be,
for a good minute.
Comic spoilers.
Yeah, comic spoiler.
Not necessarily show, but I mean, I was almost like, since they diverged so much during the second season, I was like, all right, I guess they're going a completely different route. And they just came right back with the war, exact same imagery from the comics, exactly the same, with the tank up at the fence.
Yeah.
It was, and everything was straight from the books.
And then, big spoiler for the comic book, but the death by Herschel was actually Tyrese in the comic book. So with the exact same way, by Michonne's sword. So that was a really huge. Anyone who's read the comic remembers that death. That was a huge death. So for Herschel to get that kind of death, I think is actually a big deal.
Didn't they throw the head to the other the camp?
Yeah,
they did
as well.
Yeah, they did.
So I think it was almost good that they didn't do that. That would have been a little.
But he
bit
still
too...
separated it. I don't know what happened to that head. I thought I saw it flying at some point, but they didn't really do a close up of it.
Yeah, they showed him cutting it off at the end there, and it was just kind of laying on the ground. It wasn't kind of in a defiance like, here's also his head.
Yeah.
I think that would have been even more barbaric.
But then again, it's also spoiler. We don't know the status really 100% because they didn't show it. But spoiler from the comic book, Judith does die in. This is issue 47 or 46 and 47 of the comic book.
The first volume too. If you guys are reading the big.
If you're doing the volumes, but if you're doing the monthlies, it's issue 46, 47 that this all comes down. But yeah, Judith dies, and so does Rick's wife. Lori dies in that too.
I actually would have guessed. I know Megan and I were talking about it after the show last week. Was that we thought maybe Judith would die how she died in the comics, but instead with Beth holding her.
Yeah.
And that would have been the changing game, and that perhaps Alicia or Tara would have, seen that and then killed the governor and go, what are you doing? There's a baby here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was also something else to me, was that moment where when the governor does that and when they both die at the same time, you have a random woman from Woodbury in the comics is the one who kills the governor. So that's why, because of that, I was like, well, it's got to be Lily, because that's going to be the person who makes sense when you do the comic comparison. And they did. They really drew directly from the comics. They had it so someone who lived with the governor, who trusted him, who ended up being the one who did the final blow. Now, I mean, in the comics, the governor was functioning a whole lot better. He didn't have a sword through him when it happened, but again, it was actually someone that he would have trusted on his side who ends up in the end betraying him and killing him.
What I like about this actually is it was a big shock to see this kind of a comic it's very similar to the comic in this episode, especially after there's no virus or anything that's happened really to this point this season is completely different than the comic book. So I think for anybody who's a fan of the comic book and has read up on it and is even up to like the current storyline, this was a really nice welcome surprise to see that they still are going to go back to the comic book, and maybe they'll change things around, but there'll still be some similarities here and there. It's a nice surprise.
I'll be interested to see where they take it, because what happens next in the comic, I'm not a huge fan of. A little bit later on, but
well, we do know the phone's already done, so the phone thing's gonna be wrapped up, and that was part
no,
of what was
I'm talking
next.
about like the next group that they meet, but I
want to see that group actually.
I do, yeah.
I want to see that group.
I don't know.
But
I'll enjoy seeing what ends up happening, whatever they do. But
I know what you're talking about. Yes, okay.
I just wonder how AMC could do anything, I guess.
Yeah, but another thing we should mention too is that actually it ended the exact same way, with Rick and Carl leaving on their own by themselves.
Yeah, it's the final picture.
Right,
there.
that's the final picture of the comics, and it's the final moment of this episode. So completely wrapped it around back to the comics.
Yeah.
So, which was almost a little surprising because of how much they'd started to diverge last season.
Well, I think a lot of people are happy that the prison's finally over. I know a lot of people
it's finally over.
I was a big fan of the prison in the comic book series, but yeah, eventually it ends, and I think that's part of why we like the prison chapter so much, because it was a chapter, and eventually it was great to see them get kicked out and how they got thrown out of the prison. So now we get to see that, and that's great. Now we get to see what's next. So I'm looking forward to the spring when we see a completely different, a more revamped world. We see where they get to go from here. Right?
And I could almost understand why they drew it out as long as they did, because there's a shorter period between this and the huge break between actual seasons instead of the mid-season.
Yeah.
So now we're all like, oh, it's 2 months we have to wait, but at least it's 2 months and not 5 or 6.
4 or 5,
yeah, whatever it is between the other times. So
yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and jump on some comments from you guys on YouTube. And so Mr. Rockin' Rock saying that every camp seems to be run by assholes adds an element of realism in this world.
That was Dave's favorite word last week.
It is true. Certainly there have to be communities out there run by benevolent dictators, but what happens when they encounter a band of assholes? A community of nice folk may be able to fend off zombies, but they stand no chance against the worst of humanity. Just because you're a community of nice folk doesn't mean you don't have to be smart. Like, you can be nice and be smart and, deal with people, and when you run into a band of assholes, know how to deal with them. It's just, I feel like in this show, a lot of times, all you see are the worst and the worst and the worst of humanity over and over and over again, for the most part. I mean, you have people like Herschel who are great. You have people like Rick who are good leaders. But for the most part, they keep on running into the worst of humanity. And I still feel like not everyone's like that. There are going to be groups where smart, good people who can survive by working together. And even like if the villagers have been smart, they'd be like, oh yeah, let's just all live together. Why do we have to not live together just because of this one person, the governor? So I see what you're saying, but I disagree.
Well, I mean, I think obviously in the comic they show the same thing. It just shows that Rick is actually the best person to lead. I think that's the purpose of seeing all these jerks in other camps.
A lot of times, though, that's the basis of zombie apocalypse shows and movies, though, has always traditionally been that it brings out the worst in people. It's supposed to be a psychological evaluation of how would humanity act. And to me, a lot of times, every movie does this, that it always brings out the worst. Humanity always ends up fighting and killing each other. And I just kind of disagree. I'm like, you know what? Not everybody's going to do that. But that's just my opinion on that psychological take. So Chris Martinez saying the governor would never kill himself because he is a sociopath. They love themselves too much. They also have no remorse for what they do. In order for him to ever take his own life, he would have to admit that he was wrong in every bad thing he ever did, and he'll never do that. So this is a lot of what you were saying, Nando, and it's absolutely true. He is the definition of a sociopath, which is that he comes up with ways to make himself believe that what he's doing is right, and he never will admit that he's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought it would have been interesting if he somehow was the one that killed Megan and he did kill himself. I know it wouldn't happen, but I thought that would have been an interesting twist, because then we do see that the governor had a change.
It was just so sad about Megan. It's like she was doomed from the start. I think even 2 weeks ago, we're like, oh, poor Megan. Look at her. She's ending up with the governor. It's not going to end up good.
So Liz on the chat saying, the second the governor knocked down the fence, I would have stopped helping in the fight. It literally says, I'm not actually here for this home, which is true. I mean, he came there to get the home. The moment they knocked down the fence, it was over. They had no home.
Yeah.
So it's the point of getting into a firefight where you're going to just possibly get yourself killed.
It's total faith in the governor, I guess, for his side, and then the other side, they were obviously scrambling to get out of there.
Maybe it's the fact that too they were being shot at, and they just figured they should shoot back.
Yeah,
right. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to some predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
All right, so I think that we're going to see, for the comic book readers out there, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think that we're going to follow Rick and Carl's storyline to the same extent, and I think that we're going to see we know we're going to see some of the groups come and play from the comics, but as far as survivors go, I do think Judith's alive. I think that she's going to be okay. And I think at some point Maggie and Glenn, I think they're going to meet up again. I think something bad may happen in the future, but I think first they're going to meet up and find each other again. What about you guys?
I agree. I think Maggie and Glenn will meet up. I think the first episode or two, because The Walking Dead seems to like to do this, I think we won't see them together at least for 1 or 2 episodes. I think it will focus on each group's struggle and getting back together and finding themselves all at the end. I'll be interested to see though if I've got to think like Lily and maybe Tara somehow join part of the prison group, because they're on their own now, and all these people are fleeing. So I have to imagine all of this group will be together, and I think there'll be some sort of confrontation with that as well.
Maybe some group will actually end up being helped by Carol. That's also something I think could happen.
Actually, we got tweeted before the show. Somebody tweeted us that said it was Bulls.
Bulls and Reinhardt?
Yeah. They tweeted us and said, my guess is that Carol saved baby Judith. So I don't know. I thought that was an interesting. I don't know if that actually happened.
I don't know if it's necessarily
she
baby
just sneaks
Judith,
in all ninja-like. And
I think Carol will join up with some group. It would be interesting if it was with Tyrese and he doesn't know.
Ooh, that's right. That's a good point.
Actually,
I can really see
so
that happening.
do you think she keeps quiet and then comes with the group, and maybe Rick's like, "Oh, you guys are doing okay," and kind of ruins the moment?
I think in the case of Carol, what would be really interesting is we read about some casting news a couple of weeks ago about Abraham. It'd be nice if maybe she ran into Abraham and she was with them, and that's how they ended up meeting up with Rick.
Yeah.
She was already on that group. As far as Lizzie, I agree that Lily and Tara will end up with Rick, but I actually think that they'll end up taking care of Lizzie and Micah, and that Lily will find out how messed up. Lizzie
her new boyfriend,
her new daughter is that. Yeah, well, that too. But she'll end up like having to deal with whatever crazy stuff's going on with Lizzie. So I really see her becoming the maternal figure for that, replacing Megan. So that's what I.
And there were 2 crazy kids in the comics.
Yeah.
Maybe they're gonna turn into those kids.
Yeah, I could see that happening, especially who knows with Lizzie. I mean, some of them. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, she's got a bit of a screw loose in there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think you could be spot on. I really agree with you. I think Carol and Tyrese will end up being together because they really did it on purpose to make sure that Tyrese didn't find out. It's very obvious when you look back and think about it that was an obvious choice. Like, let's make it so that's got to be a big play later on. So I think that is a good foreshadow to say that, hey, they're going to end up together.
Yeah, and Tyrese is probably going to say something like, well, I didn't see you there. What happened to you? And then she'll just be like, I'm going to be kind of quiet because he was with Lizzie and Micah. I'm
still not 100% sure that Carol killed those people, though. I'm still not 100% sure. So it's on that. You're 100% sure? Okay. We'll get to find out in the
I would
spring.
bet money that it was Carol.
Okay.
But big news, though, the governor is officially dead. He's dead. It's done. It's over. It took a long time. He is dead. He's gone. So with that said, guys, once again, I'm Dave Klein. You can find me on Twitter at @TheDaveKlein. That is KLEIN.
And you can find me on Twitter at Nandovel, NANDOVEL, and on AfterBuzz for Homeland and The Blacklist.
I'm Kristin Carole. You can find me on Twitter at KristinCarole13. And Aaron Miller, send me a message on YouTube because you wanted the poster. As we said earlier, you can find me on AfterBuzz on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
And guys, we'll see you in February. See you guys soon. Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.